Now, there's a great discussion on Morning Joe, of all places, about the direction of the Democratic Party. Interesting how Morning Joe, a very, very conservative Republican, is now talking about what the Democrats need to do. However, from what they're talking about, the conversation that they had, it seems like some in the establishment are actually starting to maybe possibly get it, even if it's a little. Now, while the Democrats all over the country were doing the tax march to get Donald Trump to release his taxes, something that, look, I do agree with, Scarborough actually brings up a great point. Maybe the Democrats, instead of just marching for Donald Trump to release his taxes, well, maybe they should also maybe listen to Bernie Sanders and start knocking on doors and start trying to set the stage for a Democratic takeover in 2018. Now, let me show you this first clip of Joe pointing out the problem with the tax march.
So, Harold, we talked about this before. Protesting is great. I've had friends that went out and protested at a couple of different rallies. But if you want to make a change, if you want to affect change, get in phone banks in Berkeley, call into the district in Georgia. If you're in Atlanta protesting, show the split screens up there. There you go. If you're in Chicago, Sacramento, wherever you are, you can actually get into phone banks if the Democratic Party will organize it. Call into the district, call leaners. If you're protesting Atlanta, for God's sake, don't hold up signs and chant. Knock on doors in the neighborhoods. I think this is the Alpharetta district up in the northern part of Atlanta, in the suburbs. Knock on doors, man. Get out there and make the change.
Put aside how effective Republicans have been in undoing Obamacare. There's no question in the last 8 or 9 years, their entire public political identity has been wrapped up in, we're going to undo Obamacare, we're going to repeal Obamacare. Democrats should have done the same thing here. We want his taxes, whatever the issue, we want his taxes, we want X. Make two things that put people on the ground, knock on doors in Georgia and Kansas, for that matter, the districts where those members are and those investigation committees are in the House and the Senate, and make that the primary focus, 1 or 2 issues. Republicans have done better than we have at that, and Democrats, if we're going to win some of these seats, have got to do better going forward.
So, Joe,
Holy crap. They're actually starting to make a little bit of sense. Yes, instead of only focusing on maybe 1 or 2, well, or on a whole bunch of different issues, nothing that seems to be related to, I don't know, the struggles of regular people, maybe the Democrats should start to focus on things like policy. And not only that, but of course, get the boots on the ground, knock on the doors. You know, look, protest is great. I think that the tax returns, there's going to be some very interesting things in those tax returns if they ever come out. But maybe we should, I don't know, think about other things too. But Jeff, you don't understand. Those taxes, they show a deal with Russia. That's what this is about. Well, look, on the deal, I think that it's very, very likely that there is a deal between Russia and Donald Trump. But right now, we don't have any proof of that. So why are we looking at that when there's also a ton of other real corruption that we can prove in the Trump administration? So why are we focused on something that might reveal a deal with Russia instead of actually pointing at the real corruption that we can already quantify, as well as point at progressive policies that people actually want? It's about trying to, I guess, prioritize, right? The tax returns are important, no doubt. I'd love to see them. But at the same time, there's other things that need to be talked about. So, I mean, let's figure out where to put our energy. Now, again, a lot of Democrats, they're thinking, no, but Jeff, you don't understand. This Russia thing, it's going to take Trump down. It's going to take Trump down. It's going to be the very thing. The truth is in his taxes. And look, you might be correct. But until we have the proof, which is very unlikely to come out on its own, because again, Trump's not going to release his own taxes, especially if he has a deal. So, how are we going to find out the truth? Unless WikiLeaks goes and leaks it, which is possible, well, we're not going to really know, but we still have a ton of corruption that we can hit Trump on. That might end his own presidency. Who knows, right? But there are things that we can focus on other than just the taxes. So let's not forget about the other stuff that we know. Now, Richard Haass, he's going to talk about, again, what the Democrats should do, and he might actually be giving them a little too much credit. And once I show the video, you'll understand why.
There's a fascinating political history here where Democrats were essentially, pardon me, asleep at the switch. What Republicans did was they targeted all sorts of state races, legislature and Senate, in those states that were very close. And what they did was they won control of both chambers of state governments, where they also had the governor, and then they redistricted and they redistricted. And what we're now seeing at the federal level for the Republicans is the fruits of these years and years of quiet effort, where very little money had outsized results and consequences of taking over all sorts of state houses. And it's now going to take the Democrats 10 years of concerted work to undo this.
It's penetrated much more deeply than that, Richard. I mean, you have an organized, well-funded effort on the ground by conservative groups, and the Kochs are just a part of this, the Federalist Society and the courts. I mean, they've gone after school boards, state attorneys generals, not just legislators. It's really kind of this overwhelming effort.
Yeah, I was just getting at state legislatures because of the redistricting control. Exactly. This has been the key to giving them control. The way to control Washington is through the states, and the Republicans figured it out. The Democrats literally missed it.
They've fallen asleep at the switch. Well, that's a kind way of putting they done fucked up, son. They focused all their energy on national elections and let the states, Republicans, go ahead and claim all the states. We'll see what happens. Well, this is what happens. They get all their policy put into places like Kansas that have wrecked the economy. For what? So they can show and see how wrecked the Kansas economy is and say, hey, look, those policies, GOP doesn't work. Well, how come they keep getting elected? Oh, because you're not there. Again, we had somebody running in Kansas that was a progressive with progressive policies. The Democrat Party didn't lift a finger to help. And not only that, but look, the whole thing is the Democratic Party has abandoned the states. They abandoned places like Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Kansas, Pennsylvania. And look, a lot of those states, those are states where Donald Trump managed to pick up in the Rust Belt. And, oh, golly gee, look at that. Now he's president because he won the Electoral College in those states. When the Democrats ceded the state races, they ironically became the elitists that Republicans always caricatured them as. And that's sad. Because, again, no one is in bed with the corporations more than the Republican Party. They are literally bought and sold by the corporations, but somehow the Democrats, they bungled their message. They don't know how to message. The fact that, no, we actually support policies that are, good for you, good for regular people, and not the corporations or Republicans. They're all about the corporations, but you don't hear messages like that. And it's sad. And look, the Democrats, they suffered from hubris, an incredible hubris. It's the same thing that brought down Hillary Clinton. So how do you fix it? Well, you actually start putting resources into races like Georgia and Kansas and Michigan and Pennsylvania, places like that. And you also talk about policy. Now, I have one more clip here from Joe.
And by the way, the Democrats have just as much money as the Republicans do. Where are they spending it?
Look, I don't agree with everything Howard Dean did, but one of the things he did do that I totally agree with was he invoked the 50-state strategy. And one thing that President Obama did not do, that team did not invest in states in a serious way, in the Democratic parties in those states. That's one thing this new chair can do, and something that President Obama and his far-reaching efforts to help the party can do in the coming months and years, perhaps.
And you have to find candidates that are culturally connected with the districts where they run, that are progressive on economic issues, but are culturally connected with the people who are going to be voting for them. Richard, what were we going to say?
About taxes. I mean, whether that's the right issue, or given where we are, like, why wouldn't Democrats be marching in favor of health care? And why wouldn't they be using that to motivate people? It seems to me those are the issues that people's care say, this is my lives.
You can impact change.
This is the future. Whether if Trump tomorrow releases his taxes or not, if you're the average voter, that's not going to fundamentally change your life.
It's not going to be because somebody protested.
So much in that. There's so much. Joe asked a good question. Where's the Democratic money? What's the Democratic Party spending all this money on? Well, I got an answer for you. Political consultants. There is a consultant class within the Democratic Party. They spend all their money paying these idiot consultants, and look what they're getting for it. They're getting nothing. They're getting their asses handed to them everywhere. Oh, the White House, Congress, all the different Senate, 69 out of 99 legislatures belong to Republicans. So much good those consultants have done. And yet, the Democratic Party raises all this money, pays all these consultants, and they get nothing for it. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Well, look, Richard Haass also has a very, he said something very smart, actually. Why aren't the Democrats marching about health care? That's a good question. You mean like single-payer health care? Which John Conyers recently introduced. H.R. 676. That is a Medicare for all bill. Right now, nobody's talking about it. I mean, would have been nice if you guys on the show, because after that video, I had to shorten everything down. After that video, they talked about how popular Obamacare is. Not a mention for single payer. Not at all. So they're not talking. Yes, they're right on, hey, Democrats should talk about policy, but they're not talking about the right policy. So, look, Americans want progressive policy, poll after poll. The Democratic Party, however, doesn't seem to want to be that party, the party of progressives. And look, that's one of the reasons they continue losing. I mean, in 1994, earlier in part of the video that I couldn't show you, the Democrats started losing in the House. Badly. And in the states. Well, who was president during that time? It was President Bill Clinton. Maybe the shift over to the third way didn't work out so well for the Democrats after all. There's only so much you can triangulate yourself. Look, the Democratic Party needs to go back to being the party of FDR. And if you want to win, that's how you do it. This panel, there's actually some decent discussion on Morning Joe for once. And they're starting to understand at least some of the problems plaguing the Democratic Party. But as usual, of course, they do tend to miss some very important things as well. So those are things that, of course, we here on the show, around the nation, other independent media, secular talk, we've been talking about this for a long time. Progressive policy is how you win. How you get people excited enough to vote for you is to put forward a plan. Put forward things like Medicare for all, like student loan reform, like $15 minimum wage. Start talking about those issues. You'll get the American people on board. And if the Democrats aren't doing that, well, maybe they should stop first listening to their consultants, because their consultants are literal idiots that don't know what the hell people want. And then two, running as strong progressives. And three, of course, supporting progressives in places like Kansas and Georgia. John Ossoff has got a special election coming up really, really soon, where he's running, and he could win if the Democratic Party gets off their ass and actually supports him. And there are races all over the country that are similar. Okay, these are places that need a bump. These are candidates that could use a bump from the party apparatus. And if they're not doing so, well, then you got to wonder why we even have a national party apparatus if they're not even going to help. And if they're not even going to win. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.